Now that we have a little bit of background about the Kingdom effort or plan for implementing an NSDI, I would like to start with questions for the other committee members or the other speakers. And I will start from left, and then I'll go to Jack, and then I'll go to Christian. So the first question I have for Roberts, I know that you have been involved in a number of NSDI implementation, more specifically in INSPIRE, the European Union program. So from your experience, what are the elements of successful implementation of an NSDI? And try to make your answer within 5 to 10 minutes so that we can get.
But I have so many things to tell.
I know. So.
Okay, so just to make a summary, I think there are 6 main phases of the successful implementation, and each of them is very important. I will start from planning. Planning is important because at the beginning we have to specify, we have to understand what kind of database we have and what do we really want to share. And then it is also important because when we have to identify users of our information. Imagine the situation when we have a map base and we share this information and suddenly we have 200,000 users of information. That means that we have to be prepared also from the infrastructure point of view. If we have services established and then people are accessing the data and suddenly the infrastructure is not able to handle all the requests, then we are in trouble. So we have to also look at this infrastructure and planning how to scale the infrastructure over time. Then the second phase is the creation of the database. That's the discovery services which once we have to show to the world what kind of data we have, what is the quality of the data, what is the maintenance strategy, and so people understand what they're using. Very often the power of NSDI is that we actually share information with someone we don't know. So we have to be really specific to explain that our data is this, and that, and the quality is like this and that. So people understand what they use, what kind of data they use. So that's the metadata phase. The third phase is, of course, the preparation of the data. I think one of the main resistance not to implement SDI is the quality of the data the organization has. There is a risk that if I publish my data, then I will see all kind of quality issues immediately. People will come to me and tell, hey, something is wrong with that data, with that street, with that parcel, with that building. So I have to be able, I have to be ready for this kind of criticism. And you know, from one point of view, it is difficult because then, okay, I look at my data, and this is not a good quality of the data, but that process will help me to improve the quality of the data. So the preparation of the data, also looking at the production workflow. Once I know that I will be publishing cadastral data, I have to look at my production workflow and then see whether I should also improve the production so my data and the quality is in a proper level. So that was the third phase. The fourth phase is more technical phase when we have to establish those services. In Europe, we defined services which are required to be implemented. So there is a set of 5 services from discovery to download, transformation services and invoking services. And then there is just a technical phase to establish a hardware and software infrastructure to publish those services. The fifth phase would be to establish a portal. As we are, as the SDI process is actually publish services, we have to also show to the people how to use it. We have to encourage them. Otherwise, they know that there is a service, but they just don't know how to use it. So, portal is a very good way to show our data, our own data, in this open fashion. And that requires a web portal environment which is able to look not in just my data, but being able to search to the discovery and then search other services and then mesh this mesh the data coming from different sources with our own data. And the sixth phase, I think, is one of the most important, although it seems to be just a minor one, is monitoring phase. And monitoring is important because if you want users to use our data, that service has to be stable. It has to be available. Otherwise, nobody will really depend on some production workflows or some business processes on the services. So imagine a situation when you do the update of your data or you issue a decision and then you are connected to the service from the mapping agency and suddenly that service is just stopped and it's not available. So immediately your workflow is hurt and then you are not able to perform your duties. So in Inspire, it's interesting to notice that there is an obligation to provide services on the level of 99%, and organizations are actually paying penalties if the service is not available in that specific level. So I think these 6 phases are most important phases of being successful in SDI.
Thank you very much, Robert, for the informative answer about the element of successful implementation of an NSDI, and I'm pretty sure that we will have some questions on that. The third question is for Jack, and it's related to the second comment here about top-down approach or bottom-up approach. There is many who claim that NSDI cannot be just implemented by government alone, and in fact some saying it is not right to do so when a lot of enterprise development activities are alone done outside the government domain. So given your vision about GIS and NSDI, it would be great for us to get your feedback about how important what we call public-private partnership or PPP approach is possible.
Okay, can you hear me? A couple of basic comments. First, in some ways, NSDI or the SDI vision is flawed. In fact, what people imagine an SDI vision is actually a GIS. That's my personal view. What is a GIS? A GIS actually integrates information, and we saw it first with projects. People would do a project, integrate some layers, create some information products, make some decisions, and move ahead. So GIS was project-driven and mission-driven. Over a few years, certain agencies would gather their data together into what we might call shared data, because they realized instead of one project at a time, they might as well build the data and use it again and again. One of the big visions of NSDI is shared geographic data. And we saw that emerge in departments. Then, after departments were running for a while, people started to think of enterprise GIS, like all of Saudi Aramco, or all of the city of Riyadh, or all of the, like that. This really happened largely in the late 80s, early 90s, as vision started to appear. And then people in about 92, 93 came up with the idea of inter-organizational, enterprise sharing of information, shared data sets. So people would copy their data and move it around. This is the evolution. At that time, people began to worry a lot about the metadata and metadata stamps. But there was no technology at that time to really do integration between organizations. It was all about file copy. So the emergence of something called clearinghouses, first metadata clearinghouses, where metadata was put up online and people could search and discover who has what, and then finally the data began to go into these portals. So we started with raw data, and we went to metadata, then we focused a lot on metadata catalogs, and then metadata portals, and then data portals. That's kind of the logical evolution. But in hindsight, we were focused on inter-organization GISs. So the vision of having, for example, one GIS for the whole kingdom is built on the idea of sharing information with shared services. I like that idea, but it's complicated. Your Highness pointed out this idea of needing cooperation. And it's hard because people then start arguing about, well, my data is better than your data, not knowing that it's probably very different. And who should have the power and who should have the responsibility. And there has not, frankly, been enabling technology that allowed this inter-organization GIS to occur. So as a result, these last 20 years, there's been lots of committees about standards, and lots of committees about metadata, and lots of committees about searching metadata, and lots of organizational meetings, lots of focus on that. But there's been very little done in actually creating real multi-organization sharing environments, or what I call national GISs. What I talked about yesterday is GIS as a platform. Is a shift, because for the first time with cloud and web services and these new things called web apps, we actually see the opportunity for multiple organizations to take on the job of building a multi-organization GIS, not a multi-organization portal or a metadata sharing standards or like that, but actually realize a full, living, ongoing system which is transactionally maintained with distributed services where people can use it and make interesting things. So the focus of that kind of environment needs to be public and private. It needs to be university focused. It needs to be all participants. And the web gives us the model for that. But the web itself, if you type in His name, might be all kinds of hits there, but what's valuable and what's not valuable? Sorting through that mess really requires authoritative source stamping, so that search with intelligence tags give me what I want. And that kind of intelligent online system is what we're starting to see when I talk about GIS as a platform. And it's open for everyone. So private companies can serve their information and be rewarded for their investments, like imagery information or street information. I mentioned Farsi Maps yesterday, standing them up as a web service. We don't mind paying a few reals to be able to use Farsi Maps or digital world's information in an e-commerce environment. We really don't. We don't mind. And other services that are stood up might be public services like base maps or cadastral maps or the weather collected off of. So this new kind of environment that's emerging is a huge jump. It moves from simply software and servers and the technology side to GIS as a service in an open environment where any vendor can plug in their server, any vendor can build an app that's cool. In that sense, it's like the Apple ecosystem where people are sharing all kinds of things, or the Facebook environment where we aren't told we have to share our information, we want to. There's a natural incentive to share and get value out of it. And building that kind of national ecosystem rather than infrastructure is, I think, inevitable. It isn't going to be somebody on top that's driving this. somebody that sets up an enabling platform where people can share and use each other's knowledge and data and services. So that's why I said yesterday, I've never been so excited as this year, because I realized suddenly that we can actually build these interdepartmental, inter-organizational, national GIS systems and spin them up so that they're available just like the web itself. Somebody asked me the other day, do you think that this is really going to happen, Jack, or is that just some kind of vision? And my answer is, I think both based on my real experience of doing this for 45 years, and also the experience of watching what's happened with some of the other platform technologies, that this will happen, and it's also inevitable that it's not going to, that in fact, government organizational stuff that we spend a lot of time on, we'll still spend a lot of time on, but this has an ecosystem in life that's going to do it, and it's just going to take off, and it's inevitable. That's, I think, my sense of it. So public-private partnerships, which seem often very hard, start to get bypassed by platform technology where everybody can play. And nobody voted or had committees for the internet, did they? Maybe
It's true,
nobody voted for Windows either. I mean, it was technology innovation that created a platform, and it showed up on our screens. And we adopted it not because of a top-down mandate. We adopted it because it worked for us. Nobody voted for Facebook or for Twitter, but we're using it because it's valuable to us. So some of the emphasis of government-focused infrastructure, which seems so hard and difficult and planning and all this, I think will be less important in the future than coming up with, listen carefully, coming up with compelling information products and services that make people dance, that get them excited. That's I think my view, is setting up the platform and then letting private market mechanisms or competitive mechanisms come alive. And that's what's happening with ArcGIS Online, frankly. We went 7 months ago from nothing to today we make about 140 million maps a day. And people have shared 700,000 maps and services in that short amount of time. They're anxious to share. And the hockey stick of this is like Facebook. I like to call it Placebook, because it's a social networking enabling tool that has its own life. And I see the same thing happen in places like Holland with Shell Oil. They went from 300 users who are GIS specialists to 10,000 users all the way across their organizations, because there's a new platform that allows them to share inside the company. They're not so interested in sharing outside, but exploration and downstream processing are all sharing. Same thing at Exxon, same thing at Chevron, same thing with big majors. And same thing inside of my own government with a geospatial platform. USGS, for the first time, is collaborating with the Census Bureau and with the Department of Transportation. They're sharing their services and using their services because they are valuable. And services that are not so valuable fall by the wayside. Nobody wants them. And the way it's been built is you can put stars. End user star voting rather than massive, I'm in control of the base map. Well, there's lots of base maps. OpenStreetMap is a base map, and the imagery stuff is a base map, and volunteered information are base maps. How are they going to survive? Because they are the authority? No, because people use them. So opening up geospatial data in a platform setting means people have to compete. The best will be most used, just like the web itself. This is a fundamental principle that's emerging with all platform technologies. So I think that this answers in some ways your public versus private. The academics have huge science and geographic knowledge to share.
And it's valuable. I can search and discover it and mash it up and model relationships dynamically in the cloud web environment that I could only dream about doing 2 years ago. So I'm pretty excited, if you can tell. I better shut up.
Thank you very much. But I want to, Jack, did I hear you correctly said that the NSDI is fraud? This is what you mentioned at the beginning?
Well, no, I don't really mean to say it that way. I said it that way purposely to get you thinking.
Okay.
Because I have lived the NSDI for 25 years. And I was with the original foundation meetings when those discussions started. And they were great visions, but now looking back on it, it seems like all those, we want to have SDI, we want to have local SDI, we want to have national SDI, we want to have global SDI. All those meetings came to not very much, because people don't actually use metadata catalogs. So if you trace through the history, first there was a lot of discussion, and I really appreciate what Robert said. Metadata stamping on quality data is very important. So we spent a lot of time, years really coming up with the metadata standards. That's good. Then we spent a lot of time coming up with so-called catalogs which would organize these metadata collections and serve them first just locally, then on the web. And then we moved to behind the metadata standards having data catalogs. So data.gov in the US and in England and in India have really taken and opened up data of governments. So it's an open government, open world. Government data is now a platform. That's all been very nice. But almost nobody uses the data. There's not that many searches on it. They search it, they download the data, then what do? They're a normal citizen or they're a normal professional. What do? What they want is services, yes, not data. And they want an application that makes the data come alive. So the world of apps, creative apps like Apple showed us, is where it's at. It's not data. We're not programmers. We don't want to be hackers. We don't want to download data, open data. It's an interesting subject and it's a valuable subject. But what people really want is information products that matter to them. So Roger Tomlinson, in his book, defined this very clearly. You start by figuring out what the information product is that you need that will really bring understanding. Because understanding precedes action. It's very interesting. Understanding precedes action. And Roger got it right. He said, don't build infrastructure, don't build the data, don't do a bottom-up approach. Start with information products. Define what's needed and wanted first, and then build what's appropriate for your project, or for your department, or for your enterprise, or for the government. And that means you have to understand what is a compelling product. So, where's my iPhone here? The guy that designed this didn't do it through a standards committee. He didn't define standards for little disks or standards for no, he designed it because he wanted to have a compelling, Steve wanted to have a compelling product that people would actually use. And notice that we pretty much all use this or copies of it in various forms. So you start with the information product that's needed and wanted. If you need a crime analysis map, you define the crime analysis map. If you need a good topographic base map, you define what that looks like. And hopefully it's compelling so that people really use it. So that's what I'm, at this particular point in my life, I'm saying, start with the information products and then design what's needed and wanted underneath it. And if you want to call that NSDI, and people will call it NSDI, that's important, but I call it a geographic information system for the country.
For the country, yeah.
That's the point. So I don't want to make angry anybody in the NSDI community or the standards community or the metadata community or any of that. I've lived it. But I think the focus is we want to have geographic information systems which integrate the data, build really cool information products, leverage the services and distributed systems, all of that. And I'm sick of looking at the details. I want a top-down vision of what we're trying to do. And NSDI, to me, connotes focusing on the pieces rather than focusing on the vision.
On the vision,
of
yeah.
a real live information system.
Yeah, thank you very